I say this because many of the famous musicians who have global hit songs don't actually write their own music. They have professional ghost songwriters who do it for them. Can you take a wild guess at who these songwriters might be? They're occultists in secret societies who practice black magic and sorcery. The music they create is not done with positive intentions that benefit the listener. Hi, my name is Vicky Lynn, and welcome to the Higher Perspective Podcast, a show about seeing the truth to heal. In each episode, I explore the non-physical realms that make up most of reality to bring awareness to the importance of spiritual health, inner healing, and bioenergetics so that you can awaken to the truth of who you are. Welcome back to episode 12. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about something I love, which is music. As some of you know, I share a lot of light language sound healing music on my YouTube channel, and most of the spiritual healing work I do in my practice involves me singing intuitively. To me, music is deeply spiritual, and I use it as a tool to bring healing to the body, mind, and soul. However, not all music is created to do that. In fact, most of what people listen to nowadays does the opposite. I thought it would be interesting for me to explore the dark and light world of music, so you can see how it can be used to suppress human consciousness as well as uplift and heal us. I hope the information I share helps you realize the immense power of music and encourage you to reevaluate what you consume with your ears. What you probably may not know is my love for music started coming through when I was just a baby. My mom told me when I was 10 months old, anytime I heard music play on the TV, I would start dancing in joy with my dolls. Then, when I was a toddler, every time we went to the mall and passed by the music store, I would run inside to the floor model grand piano and joyfully start hitting the keys to play music. I stayed there doing this for a long time, and she said it was a challenge to get me to leave. Apparently, I only ran into the music store and not any other stores. It didn't take long for my mom to realize that I had a genuine love for music. Thankfully, she decided to nurture my interest and convinced my dad to buy me an electric piano keyboard when I was about 2 years old. Considering we were poor, that was huge. This keyboard became my favorite toy and I played with it a lot. I remember one day while my parents were watching TV, I turned on the keyboard and sat there for hours trying to learn how to play a song on my own. I just followed the pictures in the music book that my dad bought, which showed me where to put my fingers. It also had basic songs, and when I looked at the musical notations, I just intuitively understood what note on the staff matched what key on the keyboard. Next thing you know it, I was playing my first simple children's melody. When I was in elementary school, I had an amazing music teacher who recognized my musical gifts. He encouraged me to join all the different school choirs, and I did. That was my first introduction to learning how to sing. Through him, I also got a chance to learn how to play some very interesting instruments, such as the xylophone, glockenspiel, and percussions like the mark tree. Music class was so much fun for me, and I loved being a part of the school performances where we got a chance to showcase the music we've been practicing to all the parents. Because my parents didn't have a lot of money, it wasn't until I was 9 years old before my mom asked me if I wanted to formally learn how to play the piano. I couldn't have been more excited and immediately said yes. We looked around for a piano to buy, but she didn't see anything she liked. Then one day we were at the mall, and the music store that I loved to run into as a toddler happened to have a sale where all piano purchases were tax-free. My mom picked out a brand new, super nice, shiny, black, upright Yamaha piano. It was a really expensive one, but that's the one that captured her eyes, so that's the one my parents ended up buying for me. She then found an amazingly talented piano teacher for me, and I had weekly private lessons with her for 3 years. Music was just something that came super easy to me, so I was able to zip through the grades. Unfortunately, I never finished my formal music studies because money was an issue, and the pressure from my parents to complete the certificate program at lightning speed and get my teaching diploma at the Royal Conservatory of Music was just unrealistic, so I stopped after the 8th grade. To this day, I think it's a miracle how I got to develop my musical gifts. It's just not something that would typically happen for someone who comes from a poor family. This is why, despite all the painful things that I had happened to me while I was growing up, I've come to a point in my healing journey where I feel extremely grateful for my parents, especially my mom. The opportunity to learn how to play the piano was a gift from Spirit. It saved me in so many ways. Because I was born hypersensitive and experienced childhood trauma, I had a lot of emotional pain, anxiety, and fears that I subconsciously suppressed. Society doesn't teach people how to deal with these problems, so most people just end up burying them deep down inside and resort to addictions to numb the pain. However, if you don't deal with these problems, they start energetically rotting inside of you, and that can lead to a lot of physical and mental health problems. The longer this goes on for, and the more that accumulates, the bigger these problems get and the harder it is to fix them. Thankfully for me, each time I practiced the piano, I was unknowingly giving myself sound healing session and receiving music therapy. As I played, memories would come to me. I would reflect on all the hurtful things that happened to me and gain spiritual insight on them. The melodies of the songs also triggered my suppressed emotions to surface. As I started to feel them, tears would start to roll down my cheeks, and I would cry out all the pain as I played. I realized later that the sound vibrations coming off of the piano were resonating with the suppressed emotions stuck in my energy body, and crying was how I cleared them out. I also found myself intuitively understanding the abstract language of music, and for the first time in my life, I felt spirit through music. Each time I played the piano, the sound vibrations took my soul on a journey into other worlds. Even though I was physically sitting at the piano and playing the keys with my fingers, my soul was somewhere else in the ethers. These experiences helped me discover the healing and spiritual aspects of music. This was not something my piano teacher taught me, and it's definitely not part of the Royal Conservatory of Music curriculum. Music is extremely spiritual to me. I think the reason for this is because sound was the creative principle that formed the universe. It was used to structure matter and is still being used that way to create our present reality, including us. Remember in the last episode, I talked about how we were born out of the primordial sound tones and light rays of a magnificent celestial intelligence? Well, those primordial sound tones are the same ones that were used to create the universe. If you trace these tones all the way back, do you know where you'll end up? At Source. In other words, Source uses sound to create. The universe is actually a choral symphony that's constantly singing a beautiful song. Every person is also a song. When people are sick and unwell, I can hear their song is out of tune, so what I do during my light language sound healing session is I use the primordial sound tones that come through my voice when I sing to retune the person back into harmony. This idea may seem really radical to some people, but this is how healing is done by celestial beings in very high dimensions outside our universe. They use sound tones and musical melodies to heal. I've actually been receiving this kind of spiritual healing work from them since I was a child, but I only became consciously aware of it about 10 to 15 years ago. I didn't know what was happening to me at that time. I just knew something was happening because every time I woke up after sleeping, all the cells in my body would be vibrating like crazy. Also, when I opened my eyes, I would see a huge mandala-like design imprinted into my energy field. It was a different design each time, but always very intricate and beautiful. The imprint was translucent and colorless, and I would only see it for about a minute after opening my eyes before it faded along with the cellular vibrations. I had an intuitive feeling I was being worked on energetically, but my curious mind wanted to know by who, from where, using what, and how. I went to see several psychics, energy healers, and spiritual teachers hoping to get some answers, but unfortunately, none of them were able to tell me what was going on. Then one morning, I got woken up by the sound of chimes. It was 3 different tones playing one after the other. Here's how it sounded like. The melody felt pleasant, bright, and warm to me. It came through crystal clear, and it got increasingly louder as it repeated, as if someone was coming closer to me and eventually playing it right by my ear. At first, I thought the tones were coming from my 3D environment. As I laid in bed in that semi-conscious or hypnopompic state, hearing them, I wondered if it was something my parents were watching on TV. Maybe the radio was on. Was someone out on the street playing a musical instrument really loud? The intuitive answer I got was no to all of them. Then I started to wonder what the significance was behind these tones. I've never had an experience like this before where I would hear chimes from spirit. I knew if I was consciously hearing it, then there has to be some kind of significance behind it for me, and I needed to get to the bottom of it. After the last set of notes played, everything stopped. I got out of my bed and started humming the tones from memory so I wouldn't forget them. I went straight to my piano to figure out what keys they were. It turned out to be A sharp in the 5th octave and C sharp and F sharp in the 6th octave. While I had an intuitive feeling these notes had something to do with healing my body, my brain didn't know what exactly was being healed or how it was being done. So I started going through a lot of books about music, sonic science, and esoteric knowledge on sound healing to try and make sense of my experience. One day, I came across a book titled Cymatics, The Study of Wave Phenomena and Vibration by 𝗖𝗛𝗔𝗣𝗧𝗘𝗥𝗦. He's a Swiss physician and scientist who studied sound and coined the term cymatics. Cymatics is the science of visualizing sound vibrations. It involves vibrating the surface of a 𝗛𝗏𝗧𝗔𝗣𝗧𝗏 plate with sound frequencies and observing what the sand or water on the plate would do. The results are truly fascinating. It turns out certain sound frequencies would organize the sand or water into geometric patterns, creating beautiful artwork. Here are some examples. When I went through his book and saw these photographs, my jaw hit the floor. They looked exactly like the designs I saw imprinted into my energy field after waking up for all these years. In that moment, everything clicked and I understood what had been happening to me. I was being healed by celestial beings, and they were doing it using sound frequencies. These sound frequencies were being beamed down from other dimensions to help restore my energy body and DNA, which would then lead to changes in my consciousness and physical body. They were coming from really high dimensions because the cymatic patterns I saw were extremely intricate and complex. Here are some pictures that show the cymatic patterns generated from different frequencies. As you can see, the higher the frequency, the more detailed and intricate the pattern became. The ones that have been imprinted into my energy field over the years are much more complex than the highest frequency shown here, which is 6,707 Hz. A majority of the sound frequencies I've been receiving are actually in the infrasonic and ultrasonic range, so it's beyond what the human ear can pick up. I only heard the chimes at one time, and I think it was because Spirit was giving me a clue so that I would discover sound healing and be guided closer to what I'm doing today. Had I not made the connection between hearing the chimes, feeling the cellular vibrations, and seeing the cymatics imprinted into my energy field, I wouldn't have figured out that I was being healed by divine forces using sound. If you're wondering what exactly they were healing, I think it was honestly everything. Because I was born with a very sensitive constitution, being put through the allopathic medical system, especially receiving the childhood injections, really damaged my physical health. I also suffered from childhood trauma and inherited a lot of energetic imprints from my parents, who both came from a family lineage of heavy generational abuse and neglect. Not to mention, I had my fair share of experiences with dark entities and alien abductions. So there was a lot of clearing and repair work needed at every level of my existence. The sound frequencies I received from the celestial beings worked to heal me at the spiritual level. They were mostly focused on helping me clear the energetic density I had, fix the architectural structure of my energy body, and repair the etheric DNA so that I could become soul embodied. Working at this level is basically going to the core and eliminating the root problem. Over time, as I integrated the healing work they did on me, I started to experience positive changes in the other levels of my existence, but this unfolded gradually over many years, and it was subtle. Once enough of the energetic density was cleared and my energy body was repaired to a level where things started to flow again, my spiritual healing gifts started to come through. This was between 2013 and 2018. After that, I had to learn how to use my gifts, so I spent many years developing my healing abilities. When I reached a certain level of development, I had to take over and do the rest of the healing on myself. I still receive healing work from these celestial beings now, but it only happens a few times a month compared to before when it happened every single night. My understanding is they never wanted me to become dependent on them, so when I was able to do what they did for me, the expectation was that I would do the rest myself. Their role was to help me get to a place where I could remember my spiritual healing gifts and then guide the development of my abilities to a point where I could also use it to help others. So the light language sound healing sessions that I offer now did not come out of nowhere. there's an extensive story behind it that unfolded over my entire life, and it involves beautiful, benevolent celestial beings. You may have noticed that all my music is tuned to 432 Hz instead of 440 Hz, which is the international standard in the music industry. There are several reasons why I do this, but the main one is because I trust the wisdom of my body and I follow the intuitive guidance of my soul. Several years ago, I had someone come retune my piano, and I was intuitively guided to ask him to downtune my piano from 440 Hz to 432 Hz. I had done some research on the history of music and knew about the Tavistock Institute and Rockefeller Foundation influences on the music industry, as well as how sound frequencies affect the human being. I came to the conclusion that music was being used as a tool by the global elite to suppress humanity's consciousness and spiritual growth. It's my personal opinion that standardizing the concert pitch worldwide to 440 Hz played a big role in that. Since I have no interest in being a part of that agenda, I decided to change the tuning of my piano and do a real-life experiment to see if I could feel any difference between the two concert pitches. I think it's important to understand that not everything you read or hear on the internet is true, even if it appears to be coming from a reputable source, such as someone with a large following or a researcher who is doing science-based experiments. There's just a lot of biases, personal interest, and hidden agendas taking place that can affect what people say, promote, and conclude. You really need to apply the information in your own life and test things out yourself to see if it's actually true. After my piano was tuned to 432 Hz, I sat down and started to play some of my favorite songs. To be honest, I did not expect to feel any difference, but the effects were so profound, I was shocked. All I can say is the moment the sound vibrations from my 432 Hz piano hit my body, I felt all the cells in my body start to light up and come to life. As my body soaked up those sound vibrations, it occurred to me that my cells have been starving for this kind of energetic food like they hadn't eaten for years. They were ecstatic to finally be nourished. I also felt my soul dancing with joy inside of me, and a sense of positivity, happiness, delight, and peace started to fill my heart. I ended up playing the piano for 5 hours straight that day because I kept hearing my body say, "More, more, more." So I continued to play until my body and soul were satiated. There are many people who say there is nothing special about 432 Hz, or that the tuning of music makes no difference on the human being, but I disagree. There is something special about 432 Hz, and I notice an obvious difference it has on my body, mind, and soul. I find those who say there's nothing special about 432 Hz have yet to wake up to how this world really works and tend to be overdeveloped in their left brain. They put way too much value on what they can physically see and prove in the 3D with science. While it's important to stay grounded in life, especially when it comes to spirituality, I think that the magic of 432 Hz is not really something that can be understood logically by the human mind, because it takes place beyond the physical, in the spiritual realms. In order to experience the magic of 432 Hz, you have to be able to feel subtle energies with your soul. I recognize for a lot of people, that connection just isn't there. This means they won't have the ability to sense spirit, so of course they will come to the conclusion that there's no difference. For those people, it really doesn't make a difference. However, for those who have done the work to expand their consciousness and develop higher aspects of their spiritual body, it's obvious that 432 Hz makes a huge difference. To me, it just feels more natural, and I find I'm able to connect with spirit much easier compared to 440 Hz, which feels more artificial and spiritually dead to me. I came across this interesting photo that compares the cymatics generated in water from 432 Hz and 440 Hz. What do you think? Which one do you prefer? To me, the pattern created by 432 Hz looks much more organized. Considering the human body is made up of about 60 to 75% water, would you rather have the cells in your body hold the pattern of 432 Hz or 440 Hz? Personally, I would pick 432 Hz because I prefer to have the cells in my body be imprinted with beautiful, organized geometric patterns instead of disordered ones. This is one of the other reasons why I choose to tune my music to 432 Hz. My intention is when you listen to my music, the sound vibrations from my voice will imprint these beautiful, organized geometric patterns into your cells and help recode the cellular structure of your physical body back into something that's more harmonious. When your body is in balance and in harmony, you experience health. When it is out of balance and in dissonance, you experience disease. Here is a study that looked at the health effects of music tuned to 440 Hz versus 432 Hz. The researchers concluded that 432 Hz decreased blood pressure, heart rate, and the respiratory rate in the subjects. My interpretation of these results is music tuned to 432 Hz was more calming and harmonious for the body. So it's not that far off for people to say that 440 Hz causes chaos, agitation, and destruction in humans. Have you heard of the difference 1 degree makes? The idea is if the nose of an airplane is pointed just 1 degree off course, after flying for 12 hours without correcting itself, the plane will end up in a completely different location than its original intended destination. I think the same idea can be applied here, where by moving the tuning of music off by just a few hertz, it's possible that can affect people in massive ways over time and take them to a completely different place spiritually. Right now, we don't really understand the full extent of how frequencies affect us. But based on my intuitive insights, I feel it's possible for the disharmony generated by 440 Hz over time to contribute to disease in the body, suppress consciousness, make people feel anxious and depressed, and alter the soul's connection to Source. I think the frequency of music was intentionally corrupted to bring chaos to the human species, but this is just my own personal opinion. To expand on this idea some more, let's take a look at the music industry. Not too many people know this, but everything you see in the music and entertainment industry is manufactured to produce propaganda designed to influence how people think, act, and what they desire in life. This is done through the Tavistock Institute, one of the global elites organizations tasked with social engineering human consciousness towards adopting the One World agenda. They are a small group of human beings who are behind all the trends we see in our society. For the last 100 years, they've been employing mind control and brainwashing techniques across the world to keep humanity's consciousness and spiritual growth suppressed. As I have said in previous episodes, it's not humans sitting at the top of the pyramid controlling this planet. It's non-physical entities. People just think it's humans because that's all they can see with their eyes. The truth is, the humans in control are occultists who are part of secret societies. They perform ritualistic ceremonies to summon dark entities so they can make a pact with them. Once a relationship is established, the entities use these humans as an instrument to carry out nefarious agendas on Earth, which can take up to 100 years or more to mature. In other words, these entities work through their human host on an energetic and spiritual level. When you look at a person, you have to use your spiritual eyes to see who's actually behind the wheel driving the human vessel. Most of the time, you'll find it's not a human soul, but something demonic. Basically, these controllers are human beings who have an entity attachment or entity possession problem, and that is a spiritual illness. By the way, this doesn't just apply to the controllers. There are many regular people, spiritual teachers, and famous musicians who have this problem as well. Not everyone who has entity problems are part of the club, but everyone can be spiritually ill. For famous musicians, my understanding is they are carefully selected and groomed for that position of influence, and then used as a tool to push certain agendas onto the population for the controllers. There's a lot of marketing and occult practices used to make these musicians appear glamorous so that people will be seduced into following them. But it's all a manufactured illusion. Celebrities are also under tremendous control. They have to follow the script given to them and do what they're told. Famous musicians are not given a large platform so they can spread truth to their audience or liberate humanity with their art form. They are given a platform to promote the globalist agenda or distract people so that the agenda can be advanced by others behind the scenes without anyone noticing it's taking place. If they go off script and don't follow their orders, they get punished. This doesn't just happen in the music industry. You can find these people planted in every industry throughout society, including academia, politics, business, health, sports, fashion, and yes, even spirituality. When it comes to mainstream musicians, their success is rarely a result of luck, hard work, and talent. There's an army of staff working behind the scenes to prop them up and create the illusion of a superstar. The sad reality is musicians are cash cows for the record labels and corporations that own them. However, it's not really all about money. The deeper use of celebrities is for manipulating human consciousness and guiding the population onto a timeline that benefits the dark entities who control this planet. I say this because many of the famous musicians who have global hit songs don't actually write their own music. They have professional ghost songwriters who do it for them. Can you take a wild guess at who these songwriters might be? They're occultists in secret societies who practice black magic and sorcery. The music they create is not done with positive intentions that benefit the listener. Instead, the music they create is intentionally designed to put the listener into a hypnotic trance using certain sound frequencies, so that the embedded subliminal messages hidden in the words can then be programmed into the subconscious mind. These messages can be summed up in one word: satanic. There are people who have done analysis on popular songs by playing them in reverse and found hidden messages in the lyrics. These messages usually involve the promotion of violence, immoral behaviors, drugs, promiscuous sex, and working for Satan. When people listen to these songs, they're having these messages programmed into their subconscious mind, and that will influence their behaviors and choices in life. If you're skeptical about these tactics being effective, just take a look at the state of our world and how a majority of people act. I'd say it's pretty much an exact mirror reflection of what those subliminal messages promote. As John Coleman said in his book, The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, these are technicians in mind control and behavior modification. This is their craft, and they're really good at it. They know what they're doing because they've been at it for a very long time. These practices and techniques are not new. They go all the way back to the ancient world. Back then, these occultists were known as dark priests and priestesses. They used their spiritual abilities to work for the dark and enslave the people. Things haven't really changed that much because, as you can see now, they're still doing the same thing. There's also an aspect of spell casting in these songs. Have you ever seen videos of how fans react to musicians? Some of them scream at the top of their lungs, shake violently, cry hysterically, and even faint when they see their idol on stage. They worship the musician as if they're a god, and they think they're super attractive, intelligent, kind, and talented, even when that's not true. It's like they just can't see clearly. Die-hard fans will also defend the musician in any situation, regardless of the facts presented, and aggressively attack others who say anything negative about their idol. I don't know about you, but I don't think any of that is normal human behavior. No healthy, balanced, and conscious human being who has some sense of self-worth would ever act that way, unless they were put under some kind of spell. What kind of spells might they be casting through their music? Well, there could be many possibilities, but I think it's mostly to give the controllers the ability to gain power over the people and drain their resources in the form of money, attention, and life force energy. A few years ago, I came across a video clip of a super famous R&B pop singer performing on stage. It was taken by a fan in the audience with a cell phone. The singer extended her arm out towards the audience and asked everyone to put their hands out towards her because she wanted to feel their energy. Then something really disturbing happened. Her eyes did something funny, and there was a change in her energy signature. These are typical signs of an entity taking over someone. It also doesn't help that in many interviews, this singer has talked about something taking over her when she performs. This something gives her the boldness and fierceness that her normal self doesn't have, so she can perform the way she does on stage. After the entity possessed her, I felt the audience's life force energy being drained from their hand, and it went into the singer's hand. Basically, this was a high-level parasitic entity engaging in energy vampirism and absorbing the audience's life force energy through the singer. The most disturbing part for me was the expression on the singer's face when this was happening. It reminded me of pleasure and satisfaction a person feels when they eat something delicious. If you're wondering why anyone would agree to have their life force energy drained that way, I don't think the fans had any idea what was happening. Most people don't have any awareness of what goes on in the spiritual realms, and also the combination of the sound frequencies from the music and the bright flashing lights from the stage likely put the audience into a trance, so they were not conscious. I've tried looking for this video clip to show you, but as you may know, many things have been scrubbed off of the internet over the last few years, so unfortunately, I have not been able to find it again. There's another example of a very famous pop singer where reports have come out from her fans saying they can't remember anything from her 3-hour concert. They remember going to and leaving the venue, but not anything that happened during the concert. I don't think this had anything to do with drugs, but rather they were probably put into a trance state by the music and flashing lights, so they lost consciousness during those 3 hours. I can only imagine what might have happened during that time because a lot can be done to someone over 3 hours when black magic, sorcery, and entities are involved, none of which is good. By the way, it doesn't matter what genre of music it is. This applies to all types of music because so many record labels have a relationship with the Tavistock Institute. If you don't want your mind shaped, consciousness suppressed, and spirituality blocked, it's probably best you support independent artists who make their own music outside the system and have pure intentions in their heart. I know all of that can be a bit scary for some people, but remember, music can also be used for positivity, growth, and healing. Sound healing is a lot more complicated than what is advertised on social media. It's not just about isolated sound frequencies, but a combination of many factors such as melody, rhythm, pitch, volume, octave, key, harmonic tones, the duration of the tones, and words used. But the most important factor behind healing music is actually the intention, energy, and quality of consciousness of the person creating the music. The healing aspect of music comes from the divine love of spirit. So if the person hasn't put in the work to clear their heart chakra and expand their consciousness into the higher realms, then they're not going to be able to channel the divine love from source into their music through their soul. In those cases, the music or singing can still sound really nice, but it won't move you deeply inside and have that healing element to it. Music has helped me heal from things I don't think our current healthcare system has any real solutions for, especially the spiritual problems. As humanity awakens and we go through a paradigm shift in medicine, I feel people will naturally be guided towards using music and sound as a modality to heal themselves. It's the medicine used in the highest dimensions and what was used in the ancient world and what will be used in the future. As 𝗖𝗛𝗥𝗦𝗧𝗧 said, the medicine of the future will be music and sound. So I'm here to share my music and spiritual healing gifts to help co-create that beautiful future we're all here for. I'll see you in the next episode.